So coming out next, we have a star-studded panel, which is going to be talking about the metaverse and distinguishing the buzz from the real deal. So I'd like to invite Jason, Fazri, David, Linda, and Andy to the stage, and they can take it away. Thank you.
All right, so we're running a little bit behind, so we'll just kind of jump in and get started right away. My name is Jason Robar. I've been in the video game business since joining Microsoft in 1994 to try to make Windows a actual gaming platform instead of just a spreadsheet codec, is what you can kind of say it might have started out as. How do we put boxes on screens? I got the chance to work at Zone.com and work on MMOs and have been running independent studios for the past 20 years. And mainly doing virtual worlds, MMOs, online games, multiplayer games, and things that come close to maybe the topic of the metaverse or the concept of the metaverse. But we've got a great panel here today, and I'd like to just jump right in and have them introduce themselves. And maybe you guys can give us a little bit of background of what brought you here to be on a panel about the topic of the metaverse when we talk about your introduction real quickly. So why don't we just start on the far side, David? And if you could talk about what brought you here today to be able to talk about the metaverse.
Sure. Hi, I'm David Mullich. I'm professor of game design at ArtCenter College of Design. But in my previous life, I've been a game developer and producer since 1979. And probably games I'm most known for is Disney's DuckTales, I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream, Heroes of Might and Magic 3, and Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines. But what brought me here today is probably my experience. I was an executive producer at the Spin Master Toy Company's software development studio, where I worked on MMOs based upon their toys Tech Deck and Bakugan. And then most recently, a couple years ago, I was working for a television network developing a virtual world for smartphones based upon film, fashion, music, and art.
I'm Linda Jiang from Superpower Labs. So for me, it's pretty straightforward. We're actually building a metaverse. It's called Byte City. My background actually is from mobile. I used to build like game developer services, like analytics and advertising platform. Right now, this is the first job I actually working for a game studio, which is learning a lot of experience. Very exciting to be here today.
Hi. Oh, wow. Well, that's my voice sounds like. That's crazy. My name is Andy Howell. I've been working in games not nearly as long as you. But no, I've been working on games and in the game industry since 2000. Worked on such games as Halo Reach, Destiny, worked on the original Fable, was on the original Xbox Live platform team, so I picked up some of the work that he did. More recently, and probably why I'm on this panel, is I worked for a little company called High Fidelity, if any of you remember it, founded by Philip Rosendale as their head of QA for quite some time. Before that, I was developing experiences in VR. But I have a long story working in metaverses and working on MMOs. I worked at ArenaNet, moved across the country to work for Kurt Schilling because I was insane.
That's right.
Fun stuff like that. So that is probably why I'm here today.
Hi there, name is Fazri, Zubair, CTO and co-founder of Lucid Site. I've been in the game industry about 15 years, been working on everything from mobile titles, console titles, VR titles, blockchain titles, kind of across the gambit. Probably here today because Lucid Site was really early into the NFT and blockchain space. We kind of saw the opportunity of in-game economies. I think we started in 2016. We did a NFT with Major League Baseball, the first licensed branded one. We did the first Star Trek NFTs in our MMO that we created and went for a whole digital economy. So from there, we eventually kind of pivoted into hosting a ton of multiplayer games from Decentraland to Decentral Games, Pixel Online, and it was really about the underlying structure of how do we support and host and scale different games, which are effectively metaverses.
So I think that brings up the right topic there, saying, these are effectively metaverses. I think if we sat down and talked to each and every one of you individually out in the audience and each and every one of us up on the stage, we'd have a slightly different background as to what we think the metaverse term means. And so I think before we can really have an effective communication with all of you, It'd be good to probably hear from all of you, what do we actually think this term metaverse actually practically means? So maybe starting back on this side, if you could help us, what do you think the word metaverse means?
As soon as I think of a metaverse, I think of like the first MMOs ever played, EverQuest, and I spent a ton of time playing EVE Online in college. And that, for me, has always been synonymous with metaverse, because that was a place where I took on a character, I joined a guild, there was an actual in-game economy, there was a solid gray market where in college I used to make beer money selling resources I'd mine off of my asteroid belt. And to me, it was just the fact that it was this whole second life, effectively, kind of going through and playing a persona, but making real friends that I still have today. That's really a metaverse. And the whole concept of, like, I think when we talk about metaverses in this context, like, is there going to be one overall consuming metaverse, kind of like Ready Player One, or is it just going to be a bunch of little ones that are all interconnected somehow? And that's where I've oscillated over the years working this, which one's the right answer, or is there a right answer, and then what the challenges are there.
Andy?
I would have to say, if I were to define the metaverse to you, or a metaverse to you, because there's no the metaverse. Stop. There's no the metaverse. Stop right now. I would define a metaverse as any time I have a transposable profile of identity. Now that can be anything. That can be anything that inspires and encourages interconnectivity with a sense of persona. So I know, big brain words. I had 3 coffees, can you tell? But no, seriously, I've been participating and working on metaverses forever. Like, the first time I played Ultima Online in the beta, I was like, this is something different. The first time I logged on to ProdigyNet, I didn't know it was called a metaverse. But that's a metaverse to me, and that always has been.
Yeah, I think this is a very difficult question to define a metaverse. I hope there is the metaverse, then we don't need to say that, we'll just say the name, right? Like, we don't say what is search, we Google it. So I think one day will happen. There will be a product define what metaverse is and will dominate the market. I think for me, I think meta actually in Greek means beyond, and verse could be universe. So I think for me, I think a metaverse is kind of like an immersive environment and really connect the virtual world and the physical world. So I don't think a metaverse is purely virtual. I think it's the connection. So I can do everything what I do in the physically, but I have a different experience. I have a totally new experience. I think that for me is the metaverse.
And David?
All right, I'm going to go old school. So the term metaverse came up in the 1982 cyberpunk novel Snow Crash. And back then, what it meant was a single, gigantic, immersive, persistent 3D world in which you could do anything, go anywhere, and you could take with you a persistent identity, goods, entitlements, abilities, all throughout it. That was kind of the dream for a long time. Nowadays, I have to agree with everyone here, the metaverse means anything you want it to mean. So I mentioned before, I was working for a television channel, and I don't want to mention its name so I don't insult anyone, but the product we were working on was called Cinema World. And in this game, it was a virtual world for smartphones, but we had a limited amount of investment. So the owners of the company kept talking to investors, and they kept saying, "Oh, we're part of the metaverse. That's what we are." Metaverse was anything to get an investor's attention because that was a hot buzzword. So really, what it means now is anything you want it to mean.
Okay, so how about anybody in the audience? You've heard how our panel thinks about the metaverse. Is there someone in the audience that thinks there's something that really is defining to the word metaverse that you think we all should have? Anybody? Or does that kind of cover it? We've kind of touched on MMOs are kind of metaverses. We talked on identity as a component. Yourself out there.
I'd combine 2 of these things and say it's that transferability, not just personas, but transferability between digital and physical, and between digital personas in different worlds, but transferability at the very base level between physical and digital and digital and digital.
Excellent. Yeah, I like that word. Transferability is a nice one to add to the mix. Thank you. So we heard, a lot of us have had experiences with MMOs. Are virtual worlds, is 3D required? Is virtual reality required? Is it possible to be a metaverse that's text-based? So is it a way to be able to connect transferability across physical and digital? What can be included in a metaverse?
I think what's essential is easy connectivity to people and information. I think it could be 2D. I don't think it necessarily has to be 3D. It certainly doesn't necessarily have to be virtual reality or augmented reality. It is anything that removes barriers online to getting where you want to go or doing what you want to do.
Linda?
I would still argue it should be 3D. So I think, people say metaverse could be also 3D internet, right? So that's what I think. I think it still need to be 3D, but I totally agree with you. It doesn't have to be VR or AR. Truly have like a different, different devices to experience the, the world, virtual world. And I think like I said, you basically can do everything. You could do social, you could do shopping, you could do, play game. Like what we basically combine our metaverse, we combine game, community, and creativity all together. So I think like everything, particularly for metaverse generation, they really spend more time like to have social activities in metaverse, probably in the real world. So I think the social going to be a very, very important part for the metaverse.
Yeah, what was coming into mind when both of you were talking was something that fosters communication and collaboration is a key part for you to. It's not required for a metaverse in my mind of a definition. Like you can have a metaverse that is just transferable objects and personality. Like I can consider a metaverse, just a leaderboard, honestly. But in a modern term of what in my mind a successful metaverse is like you're both touching on, is fostering communication and collaboration, and in my utopian view of what I hope is creating experiences for people to do good for one another, but also creating experiences for ownership, creating experiences for identity, creating experiences for just fun. Because let's not forget, we make games.
It's the wrong panel then.
I guess. Yeah, I make games.
One thing we were touching on here with metaverses, and I think it's kind of key to me as I've kind of evolved through this industry and seen where the space goes. I think user-generated content and having the ability for users to create meaningful content in the game is going to be key. Even going back to EVE Online, which didn't really have a UGC system, we would like drop containers to spell out things or mark out our territory or define areas, and we just use the tools that had in the game. I think as this evolves, when we start seeing true metaverses, there needs to be a lot of creative freedom, kind of like Roblox, for example, or Minecraft. Like you could see those as being really close to what probably the future metaverse looks like. Every individual can create whatever they want, and then with AI and the whole new generative technology that's coming out, it's text-based today, but it's only going to be a few short years or months at this rate before you get full 3D objects and creativity all of a sudden gets unlocked. Right now you have my nephew, who's 6 years old, started a blog on Medium writing these amazing articles about just random topics all through ChatGPT. He just figured out how to use it, and I think it's crazy to watch him generate this type of information. You take that and apply it to the world of students, artists, or even individuals, professionals that want to creating content. It's almost like the metaverse was missing something. It was a little too difficult to create content for a while. Now with this emergence of generative AI, I think we could see a subtle change and eventually a growth into it. So I think user-generated content is probably going to be key to a true metaverse.
Okay, so I think we've kind of touched a little bit on the definitions of what we mean when we're up here trying to talk about this. So let's then talk about why is it important. What is it that you see that this audience should understand about why the metaverse is still something we should care about? Because didn't an article come out just a few days ago that said the metaverse is dead? Facebook, renamed Meta, has laid off lots of people that were working in this space. So is the concept dead? Are we all just needing to work on AI and move on from metaverse? Or is there still something we need to care about?
I seem to remember an article a few years ago saying PC gaming was dead. So
I think it's happened about 5 times now.
Yeah.
The PC is completely dead.
Yeah. So, I mean, I take that with a grain of salt. I think Meta's concept of metaverse might be dead for them. But, you know, it's about fostering community. We do this in reality already. If I'm a car guy, I'll get with a bunch of other car guys. We'll talk about cars. We'll work on it together. I'm a tech nerd. I love space games. I will sit in EVE Online for hours just talking about configurations and how we could tackle this raid better. It's something I like to do. I think that's kind of what metaverses need to foster. I'm still back and forth on whether they'll just be one unified or what the actual end looks like. But yeah, it's TBD for me. I really have to see how technology changes and evolves and how we get there.
So there's one thing that comes to mind when you ask me why it's important. Does anybody remember something called the pandemic? No. My daughter's 11. Story time. She took to Roblox recently, reluctantly. She likes to play on Zoom with her friends. She plays Barbies. She's 11 and she loves Barbies. She wants to make toys. I 3D print toys for her. So her friends talked her into Roblox, and not because they go to a bunch of different worlds or anything. They have one world they all go to. It's their world they go to. And you know what they do there? They play virtual Barbies. They play virtual family games. They're playing the same exact games they were playing with Barbies, but virtually in Roblox. She's 11, and she still has play dates. She still goes and sees friends and whatnot. But her social life has this integrated digital component that I didn't have until I was a teenager. And it was this like weird outlier at that point. The metaverse is how our kids are going to interact with one another when they can't see each other in person. And that is key for social development right now. They need it. They have to have it. They were starved for it for years. So in the present, the metaverse I see is why we need it. But also, I worked on High Fidelity and we had conventions in the metaverse. I got to meet people that I never would have met. I got to meet voice actors, cool things. My daughter got to meet an Egyptologist from the University of Cairo giving a tour about Nefertari's tomb. And it electrified her, wanting to know more about pharaohs. And this female pharaoh she had never even heard about, their school was never going to teach her about. These experiences are why we need metaverses. These interconnected things that expose us to new enriching experiences. That's why for me personally, that's what matters in it.
Yeah, totally agree with you, actually. By the way, I like Roblox as well. I think there are actually quite a lot of very, very cool game, casual game. And I think I think stuff from 30 years ago, people say Facebook is dead, right? Nobody going to use Facebook anymore. But now TikTok is still alive. So I think product will be die because like a different generation will use a different product. But the whole idea, nobody will say social network will die or social app is going to die. It's not going to, right?
You want to visit my MySage page? I got cool bands on it, yeah.
Yeah, oh, definitely. Oh, that's just I don't have that much time, actually. I think just during my time, every time on TikTok. But anyway, so I think, I totally agree. I think that's kind of, your daughter, 11 only, but think about all the Gen Zs, all this whole younger generation. That's the way they experience the world. They experience their social life. They experience their, their entertainment. Oh, that's everything. They kind of they live in that moment. So I think that's very important. That's also, I think, particularly in Metaverse, the fashion company are very actively to try it. If you see the big partnership, they always Prada or all this kind of big fashion, because they realize by partnering with all the Metaverse platform, they can reach to the audience, which they will never be able to reach to in the past or through any other channels. All this younger generation, Gen Z, whatever, they don't have money to buy the product right now, maybe, but they got a really clear brand image. They probably buy something with their avatar. But this is a really good way to engage with their potential customer or engage with the market. So I think that's, from that perspective, I think, it is very, very important. And particularly, I think they're already showing a lot of successful use case, the brand getting involved in the metaverse.
Yeah, I think the metaverse is only dead as the go-to buzzword for getting investment. Right now, it's AI. That's the buzzword. This is the AI edition of Pocket Gamer Connect. AI is essential for the metaverse. It is essential for generating procedurally generated worlds. It is important for curating content. There is so much content out there. Reason why metaverse is important, as the rest of the panel has been saying, it's for social connection. It is for the democratization of content creation. Also, another important thing is that right now we are a culture that celebrates ignorance and distrusts expertise, and I think the metaverse is an important tool for breaking that apart to give us access to the information and knowledge about others, to expand our world and see things from other people's perspective.
So in the same vein of everything new is old, I might say with my first 300 baud modem in the 80s, logging into CompuServe or Genie, that might have been the very first steps into metaverses, because you had an identity, that identity transferred. You could go into multiple games on some of those services. I worked at Zone.com, where we had everything from Age of Empires to chess and everything in between, and your identity would transfer across those things. So are we trying to invent something new that, in fact, we could actually learn a lot of lessons from the past about safety, identity, transferability, personas, immersiveness, community and social moderation? Are there lessons to already be learned from the things that we've already accomplished, rather than thinking that we have to reinvent something new called the metaverse, when virtual worlds and MMOs and online communities have existed for decades now, and developers like yourself, David, can learn or can leverage and share things that already went wrong, things that already that we should avoid. What are the things that we can learn from the past of what we've already accomplished in this space, rather than thinking that this is a brand new field with no knowledge to reinvent?
Well, I mean, there are new technologies being created all the time, and expanding the metaverse requires creating new technologies and getting over technological hurdles and logistical hurdles and all sorts of information sharing hurdles. But one thing we must never lose sight of, going back to the days of the earliest games, it's all about the user experience. It isn't the tool that's important. I mean, the tool's useful, but the tool is not the end result. The technology is not the end result. It is the experience. If you're creating something, you call it part of the metaverse or you call it part of something else, the thing to remember is, what human needs are you satisfying with it? Are you satisfying the need for meaningful experiences, for novelty, for creativity, empowerment, accomplishment, social connectivity? That's what you need to be focused on. You need to be focused on whatever new tools come up, whatever buzzword we're calling them by. It's something we've known all along since the earliest days of the game. It's all about the player and what engagement and benefit are we providing to the player.
Anyone else want to jump in on that topic? What can we learn from the past instead of thinking we have to?
Yeah, I want to reiterate. Ask yourself why. Ask yourself what you're making. Can AI, buzzword, trigger word, NFTs, blockchain, whatever, how does it make your product better? Do you actually need it? Because at the end of the day, are you going to be able to make this thing? Are you going to be able to ship this thing? And everything that you add to it, every feature that you add to it, is going to complicate it, is going to make it harder, is going to add tech debt. Do you need it? Do you need to create an overarching metaverse to achieve the goal that you're trying to achieve? I would love for you to. But do you actually need it? That's the avoid the hype. Like, it's the roll credits.
Yeah, I want to jump in. I totally agree, right, to think about the why. But I think as we just talk about the user experience, right? This is key. But a lot of time, we don't know what is the best user experience. We don't know the why, right? Just like TikTok example, they become the best user experience. So I think that's from that perspective. Sometimes we have to try something and then from try and error to figure that out. Why we need it or why don't we need it? But of course we need to have like a data to back out the metric to say what we want to test. But I think with all this new technology, because my background, actually my previously last 5 years actually working in the AI space. So I found the right technology is amazing. Then sometimes maybe have just to get hand dirty and then craft something and then say, maybe we don't need it.
I will say, learning from history though, I've been in the meetings that are like, to keep this metaverse live, we're gonna have to charge our users $10,000 a month. Like, we can't do it.
Yeah,
I've been in the meetings, that are like, we didn't ship matchmaking, so half of us are laid off today. Yeah. So that's a case where we didn't add the technology, and we should have. So you need to really spend time honing in, from my point of view. Unemployment would agree with me. From my point of view, why you need it.
So as an audience, how many of you are involved in something that you would term the metaverse? Just raise your hand. Okay, so just a couple. And for the rest of you, have you ever been in a virtual world MMO type thing that you think of kind of as a consumer? Raise your hand if you've been in a. So most of you experienced that, virtual worlds. So what is it that we can do new? So we talked about a little bit about the past, that we've got a lot, whether it's Habbo Hotel or whether it's Club Penguin or whether it's Roblox, virtual worlds are nothing new. They've been around for well over 30 years. But what is it that a metaverse offers that's completely different than a virtual world or an MMO that we can do that's new, that's going to bring and address player needs or the consumer's needs? Anyone?
Oh my, what can we do that's new? I'm always looking for ways to make it easier to reduce barriers from going from one experience to another. I would eventually like a way so that I like MMOs. I like being in different fantasy worlds. I would like an easy way to be able to transfer to them without the constant having to log in and remember what passwords I'm using. Kind of easy transference between worlds and not make it so difficult to really navigate the internet through all these different walled gardens.
I was about to say, one of the most effortless experiences I've experienced, and it's not even a metaverse, but logging into any Disney-related product. Same login, same platform. I want to look at Disneyland tickets, same login. I want to watch Disney Plus, same login. Don't hack me.
Google login, Google sign up.
Well, I mean, just saying, yeah, but removing these walled gardens, making it easier for interconnectivity. And some platforms are trying to do it. Some places like, Blizzard has got their, but then I've got 6 launchers on my computer. It's insane, the amount of different walled gardens I have to navigate. So that really resonated with me. Thank you.
I mean, when we're talking about something new for the metaverse, I go back to, again, I'll use MMOs as an example, because there always comes to a point of a content wall. Like, I'll play New World until I've done everything, and I'm just waiting for the next content drop. And I remember when we first considered going into blockchain gaming, the first thing we were considering is like, okay, this is going to open up the economy, take those gray markets legit. And that for me was new and exciting, and that would help the metaverse be born. Didn't exactly work out that way, unfortunately, and I think blockchain is still going to play a key part in future economies, especially in gaming, just because of the decentralized nature. But really, the struggle I think any persistent metaverse is going to face is content. You're going to hit a content wall. You're going to have nothing to do. This is where, again, generative AI, even though it's buzzword and hot right now, I think it has a lot of value it's going to bring to games, depending on how they're executed and implemented. Imagine playing World of Warcraft where the quests never end and it continuously evolves and the storylines get deeper and it's affected by the entire society of players in there. I mean, we're a hair away from that with current large language models and AI tech that exists. So that's what really gets me excited. That's why I really think AI might be that pivot we needed to really push the metaverse forward, because without that, we had this problem with our MMO. We were constantly churning for content, adding more technical debt, creating more problems for ourselves, just trying to get more licenses, more information, more characters in there, and we should just never play catch up. Players would blast through that in 10 hours, 6 months worth of work.
Yeah, I think I totally agree with that. I mean, we try in quite a number of like AI tools, help our production team, and really save lots of time and the efficiency. And I think add on top of that for the AI, if we just talk about AI perspective, I think I was in another previous panel and people talk about, you used to interact with a bot, and most time you interact with a bot, and the bot actually, very, very basic and sometimes stupid. But I think with right now all the technologies, they are actually be able to build a really smart agent. The agent actually can involve themselves. Recently, I think Stanford and Google actually released a paper, and they built like 26 agent, like building a small community, like a community-based agent. And every agent that have different task activities, like the dad can actually get up at 6 o'clock, cook breakfast, and at 6:30 the kids will wake up. And then like at 7 o'clock, everyone will eat breakfast, etc. The agent could have their own task based on the model, just using the language model itself. So I think from that perspective, I think still, with all these tools, it not just help us to improve the efficiency, but also help our users to be actually engaged with something they will never be able to engage in the physical world. I think that's the beauty of Metaverse.
So I think we've heard a couple of good common elements here of, social, looking at the actual end user and focusing on their needs, thinking about the identity. Can you truly have a social space if my identity has to change every time I go from one game to another or one experience to another? So identity portability seems to be really key, because if social is key, then I have to be able to find my friends, my friend groups that I form, my clans or my guilds. Those need to be able to be transferable as well. So what are the other kind of really key things that anybody in this audience could take away from thinking about building experiences or being part of those going forward, that are just the really key takeaways from this that we've discovered, besides focusing on the end user? David, in your experience, anybody in this room should know what going forward as a good key takeaway from thinking about the metaverse?
I think I'm going to touch upon something that Linda said, and that was that where I was saying before, define the user experience. We don't know what the experience is going to be like, so it's real important when you get excited about something to actually test it out on people. There's a wide variety of users. There are people of different levels of skill, different levels of knowledge. There are cultural differences between us. Words mean different things. We have different capabilities and abilities. I think that whatever we're developing, before we get hooked into it, test it out. Test early, test often, whatever it is you're developing, to make sure that you are indeed creating the type of experience you want to create, especially when dealing with new technologies. Unfortunately, that means when we're dealing with new technologies are evolving all the time. I've worked on games using game engines while the game engine was still in development, because the game engine kept changing, it invalidated a lot of the code that we were doing. So when you're working with new technologies and you don't know what its effects are, be prepared to spend a lot of time and a lot of money on testing and iteration.
Linda?
Yeah, I think the most important thing, if we talk about a metaverse, is still about the engagement. So it is an experience, right? Immersive experience, but the player need to have something to do, or the user need to do something in the metaverse. If just explore the world, doing experience, some kind of brain experience, or whatever experience, that's just not going to be enough. So I think the metaverse need engagement. People need to have fun in the metaverse.
1000% agree. Yeah, I mean, my real key takeaway, besides purpose, which they've touched on, and iterate, 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 iterate. I can't say it enough, iterate. Sharpen. But also, find the fun. Give a crap about what you're working on. Love it. It's your world. You're making a world. If you're making a metaverse, people are going to live in this world. You're going to get fans of this world. You're going to get people that this is their life. Every metaverse I've ever worked on, I meet people where this is where they live. I'm building them a house. I'm building them a city. I'm building them somewhere where they're going to find purpose. That's a responsibility. Don't take advantage of them. Don't. Just be good. Be good to them. It's the best advice I can give, yeah.
To touch on David's point there with the ever-changing technology we currently have, and just principle in my companies I've always lived by is try to fail fast. Try not to get into the weeds. You have a concept, like how quickly can we get to proof of concept? How quickly can we put this in front of people and see if it works? And I've seen, especially when we were running our SaaS hosting solution, hosting like 2,500 games. So I saw a lot of insight and a lot of developers building metaverses. And you could go years before they're getting in front of their end user and just burning money, burning runway, where you could have probably done that in 3 months and proofed your concept or iterated your idea. So fail fast, because that's going to lead you to that end solution. Like, is this fun? Are we going in the right direction?
Now, we've got a great panel here, so we've just got a few more minutes. I'd like to make sure if there's any questions from the audience that you get a chance to ask these folks or contribute to. I see a hand back there.
Hey guys, great talk. I'm curious to what you think about, like, specifically blockchain metaverses and where they might be doing things right or failing the audiences that they're trying to tailor towards at the moment. You guys touched a lot about, existing metaverses that have been around for like 30 years now and everything, and avid MMO gamer and everything. But with the new advent of like blockchain technology and everything, I noticed you haven't hit too much on those. Wondering what your thoughts are on them.
So the promise of blockchain for the metaverse.
Yeah, blockchain metaverses, that's exactly what we started with in 2016, 2017. And what we did was we got our MMO up and running within, I think, 1.5 years of development. We got a live economy up and running tied to the blockchain working. And we thought, like, even though we were close to first, there would be a lot more that came out. What we've seen, what we continue to see today, most blockchain metaverses are incomplete. So either it's a metaverse where you have transactions and no fun, or they have a vertical slice of fun, they're still in development. It's really hard to judge any blockchain metaverse that exists today because they're not done yet. So my thought comes back to a lot of them have great concepts. I'm worried that they're in development hell and they'll never get done, like most games. That's the scary part. The base concept, if you could really open up that economy and have free ownership and easy transferability of items between users, and there's purpose and missions and things you could do, amazing. It's awesome. That's exactly what I'd love in World of Warcraft or EVE Online without having to go gray market. But I haven't seen a good one yet, or one that's done.
Check our game. Yeah, but we don't say we're Web 3 metaverse. We think we're Web 2.5, so actually in the middle. So so the game actually is still off-chain, but the asset is on-chain, so the asset could be transferable. But we give the power to the user, so when user purchase out this asset, they could choose they want to mint as NFT or not. So because we think it's user's choice, we don't have to force everyone has this kind of, the NFT gate, to block people. I think it should be open to everyone. If Web3 users, they want to own the asset, they can. And we'll also support cross-chain because we think people would want to actually, they have their, they have their own preference or choice. And another thing we're doing is really we open up. So for people who have their existing NFT collection, we work with lots of partners, and then they can actually just using that NFT connection, we actually, in our own avatar, we have a place to show their NFT. So then they can bring up that status, right? So all their friends in our metaverse will know, their apes holder, their, so that's kind of thing I think we will also, work with all the other NFT projects, build the whole ecosystem.
Yeah, I was going to add, at Hi-Fi, we stored our items on blockchain to introduce obscurity and scarcity into items. So it was up to the user to create the item if they wanted to have 1 minted or 10,000 minted. And it really enabled people to have ownership of their items. And the problem that we ran into was adoption of coin for buying items, and because we were early. Right, we were very early. NFT wasn't even a term really yet. We just were storing our items on blockchain. That was cool. That was something that enabled us to give users ownership of their items. But the problem that we ran into was like David said, the friction of people being able to convert into Hi-Fi coin and buy their items with it. We ended up having a giving tree that would just sprout Hi-Fi coin every once in a while. So people like populate coin into the world. We were just giving money away. So if you're going to use the technology, make sure it adds something to your product and it's a solution. So yeah.
Question over there?
So general question about the future of game developers in the metaverse. I don't want to embarrass David with old work, but I'm actually replaying Bloodlines 1. And I'm thinking about like, what does Bloodlines 3 look like? You know, and I'm a 3D artist, I'm a creative person. Let's say that AI really and procedural generation really like allows game developers to create those things without having artists custom crafting each asset. What does a creative job look like for either a storyteller or an artist? Are they curating? Are they dungeon mastering? You know, are they producers essentially on like a reality TV show? What are the jobs of the metaverse 10 years from now?
I think the jobs are still very much like it is today. You are going to have, the AI tools for generating of code and art and story are getting better and better and better. So maybe that we still have coders and we still have artists and we still have writers, but they're using AI as tools to maybe helping them get past some of the hurdles, get some of the drudgery done or some of the bulk of it done, but they're still, I still think they're going to be able to go in and refine it and make it better. I think AI is going to get better and better and better, but still has a long, long way to go before it develops human level of creativity, human level of common sense, human level of what is appropriate and inappropriate.
This one's actually a pretty interesting question because we've been prototyping this new app, and it's a robot chatbot type of thing, and it has facial animations. And we came up with 3 weights for how it would move its eyebrows depending on the context of what it's saying and responding to. And instead of just going through the normal way of getting an artist to do morph targets and determining, okay, this is happy, sad, surprise, we actually went through and we trained the large language model when it gave a response to give 3 values for each of those morph targets. And we would basically say, well, this was a happy response, angry response, sad, and we did about 1,000 different scenarios. The cool thing about that is in a conversation now with this, it's not just doing that same motion, it's actually interpolating between this, and you're getting a much more natural face motion. But to that point, we still had an artist create the robot, create the initial sets. We still had an engineer kind of develop the framework for this. We just took out that one step of having to create, 1,000 different animation sets, and they're just like, okay, just give us the weights on what you think this should be, trained you on what we think it should be, and then let it kind of evolve and emerge this new type of setup. So it's a small example, and it's a prototype app, but that's kind of how I see the workflow changing, like those little steps that you could maybe replace with an AI.
Okay, with that, we are over time, so we're going to wrap up right here. But thank you so much if you guys would join me in thanking the panel for their time. And before you rush off to lunch, if you guys want, go up and introduce yourself to these folks. And thank you for the panel, and thank you guys for the audience. A wonderful topic, and enjoy the rest of your day and your lunch.
Thank you for moderating.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.